A place called the Glory Orphanage, which was operated by a religious facility. It's been 50 years since he left, and now that place has transformed into a massive cartel that spreads its influence in all corners of the political and business world. They now mask themselves as an organization called the Glory Club. It's the same organization he's been a part of for many years, and now he plans to bring it down with his own hands. Elsewhere, we see the eight-legged man going to see a man in a cold chiller, where meat is kept. The smug man asks the octopus head if he came here to deal with him alone, and the hit man replies that he's already overqualified for this job. Sitting there confidently, the target responds that the people at the Glory Club are going to die sooner or later if they keep trusting in Peter, but the eight-legged man doesn't seem to be interested in talking too much. He just wants to get it over with. They talked back and forth for a bit, but before they could see any action, the eight-legged man was surrounded by men holding knives. It turns out that this place is the base of operations for the Wagner mercenaries, which holds the title of the best private military company in the entire West. Despite being surrounded by dangerous killers, the eight-legged man is unfazed, making the leader of the mercenaries perplexed. He wonders why he would be so confident when he's clearly outnumbered. The leader then orders his men to take care of their guests. They all immediately charge at the eight-legged man. Unfortunately, that doesn't work out too well, and he easily defeats the men using his signature skill, full body hypermobility. The leader of the mercenaries is terrified when he sees how the eight-legged man's body twists and turns to take out his men. He yells for the insanely flexible killer to stay away from him, but the hitman just ignores him and finishes his assignment. Afterward, he returns to his hideout with the girl from earlier and is shocked to see that his men have been murdered. The cameras were destroyed and there's no evidence of a weapon anywhere. When he sees this, he concludes that the attacker could only have been one person, and that's none other than Peter. The eight-legged man wonders what kind of tricks the old man has used to stay alive and even manage to kill his men. In his condition, either way, he's still intent on killing Peter before anyone else and before the bounty drops, so he sends the girl to report back to him. When she finds Peter's whereabouts, the girl stays silent for a bit, thinking about the time back at the bookstore where the kind old man had valiantly saved her from the ambush and genuinely seemed to care for her safety, but orders are absolute, so despite her hesitation, the girl accepts the task from her superior. After that, as they walk into the restaurant, the two and their subordinate find someone waiting for them. Inside, they see a young man sitting at one of the tables, and the eight-legged man assumes that he's a customer, telling him that they're closed for the day. He asks him what he came for and if he made a prior reservation. Peter looks up at them and explains that he does not have a reservation, however he comes here with a deep grudge. Hearing this, the eight-legged man asks him if he pressed him for his tab or something in the past, but our hero replies that he's somewhat correct, only that his tab is way too big. In fact, as we zoom, our boy glares at the hitman while saying that his tab is about 7.6 billion won. When Peter says this to the eight-legged man, he smiles, initially thinking that it's just a joke. However, fear grips him as soon as he realizes what he's talking about, and he orders his men to lock the doors. He then proceeds to talk with the young man. He deduces that he's connected to Peter and assures him that he won't be leaving the restaurant alive, even though he wants to kill him. The eight-legged man is curious to know who the young man is and how in the world he knows about Peter. He takes a closer look at him and confirms that he's not a member of their club. Even worse, he doesn't have any information on the mysterious man and has no idea what he's planning. As his subordinate his gun, the eight-legged man wonders if the young man is Peter's secret child or his disciple, but he quickly dismisses thought when he remembers that Peter has always worked alone. After failing to figure out who he is, he tells the young man that he's giving him a chance to live and offers him two options to choose. The first option is that he reveals Peter's whereabouts and walk out alive, while the second option is that he resists and die with a bullet to his head. Peter just taunts him by pretending to think before claiming that he doesn't need any of his options. Naturally, that pisses off the octopus head, but our boy has a third option in mind to cool down that temper. With a smug and confident look on his face, he finally announces that his name is Peter, and heavens forbid none of his targets have ever lived to tell the tale. After hearing that name, the story continues, and after telling the eight-legged man that he's the legendary Peter they're looking for, our hero also reveals that he was the one who killed his subordinates. The eight-legged man is instantly dazed upon hearing this because it doesn't make any sense to him. The Peter he knows is an old man, so he asks the young man before him what he's talking about. Peter replies to him with a snide comment, suggesting that he's deaf. He then reiterates what he said, admitting that he killed the henchman he left at his hideout. The eight-legged man still isn't sure what's going on, and he doesn't believe that the man sitting in front of him as Peter, he mentally debates with himself about who the man really is. Why he would attack them. Eventually he gets impatient and decides that things will have to get messy. He calls out to Peter, who he still thinks is a normal student, and threatens him while the high school girl and the waiter pull out their weapons. The eight-legged man sternly demands that Peter reveal his true relation to the old man they're looking for. My guy watches as the girl pulls out her knife ready for a fight, and then replies to the eight-legged man. He tells him that there's one method he can use to find out the true relation. And when the eight-legged man asks what it is, Peter tells him that he would have to kill him. Hearing this, a wide smile appears on the octopus head's face. He tells Peter how convenient it would be for him, since killing is what he does best. He then gives his waiter the signal to shoot the assassin, but tells him to make sure he can breathe after getting shot. Just when the waiter pulls the trigger, a chopstick is sent flying into his neck and he collapses to the floor, with his neck impaled by it. Confused by what just happened, the eight-legged man and the girl turn to Peter and see him pulling out another chopstick. Miss Shortskirt, who was feeling very confident before, starts to doubt herself when she sees how lethal the strike was. Peter sent the chopstick right into waiter's vitals, and after seeing that, she admits that she doesn't know anybody else who is that skilled, not even in the Glory Club. After that, our hero casually grabs 2 more chopsticks and continues his meal. The eight-legged man is impressed and compliments his flashy skill as he walks over the waiter's body. Admiring the assassin's handiwork, he asks what club the young man is from and offers him the chance to join the Glory Club. The eight-legged pretends to be friendly, but when he gets close enough, he swiftly pulls out his gun, unleashes a barrage of bullets on Peter. However, Peter is quick enough to use the table as a shield and hide behind it. The eight-legged man laughs as the bullets go through the table when he sees the red liquid flowing out from underneath it. He calls Peter a kid after all for thinking he could stop the bullets from such close range. With the table, octopus head gloats, thinking that he's injured the young man severely, and offers him one last chance to reveal the ties he has to the old assassin. When he doesn't hear any response, he decides to finish the job properly, but when he looks behind the table, he's shocked to see that the red liquid is chili oil and not blood. He turns around frantically, begins to panic when he doesn't see any sign of the skilled killer. He even starts to wonder if he's fighting some kind of ghost. Suddenly he looks up and sees Peter hanging from a pillar. The assassin immediately jumps down, spits out the chili soup he'd been holding in his mouth on the octopus head's face. With his vision temporarily impaired, Peter proceeds to unleash onslaught of punches on him. He starts with a swift punch to his arm when he tries to shoot him, and then follows up with a more powerful blow which destroys the gun. After disarming him, Peter lands another devastating smack to his face and finishes the lethal combination before the eight-legged man can process it all. At this point, he's bleeding from the mouth and wondering who this insanely fast kid is. To make things worse for him, he can't even see a thing. While the eight-legged man is still in a daze, Peter grabs his head with both hands and quickly twists it to snap his neck. After he deals the finishing blow, the eight-legged man's head is completely facing backward and he falls to the ground again. As Peter walks away from him, the hitman just lies there in confusion. He thinks about how he'd never seen such a skilled fighter at that age. In all his years of going up against countless opponents, he lies there, reminiscing about when he was a young boy. He remembers a time during training when he was told that he would need a special technique he would use to subdue his distracted opponents. At that young age, the eight-legged man had already created a special technique that only he could use. He could pin his opponents to the ground like a mixed martial arts fighter and twist them up until they were begging for their lives. Despite this skill being incredibly lethal, his trainers only pushed him to go farther, claiming that he should make his grip so tight that it could kill the opponent. And with time, this is exact what he did. He was squeezing the life out of his opponents. Even then, his trainer still had one more lesson for him, and it was that he should never turn his back on his opponent, even if he thinks the fight is over. After mastering the art of awareness in battle, the eight-legged completed his special technique and was certain that he would never lose a fight against anyone. Unfortunately, here he is in the present, lying on the floor, knocked down by a young stranger. But I guess you only lose if you stay down, and the eight-legged man certainly isn't one to stay down. Before Peter can walk out of the place, the fallen hitman grabs his leg, and in the blink of an eye, he wraps himself around Peter using his signature move. He twists Peter's body till he finds it hard to breathe. He holds him in a chokehold, causing his head to turn purple due to the lack of blood oxygen supply. He then tightens the grip and tells Peter that he's been doing this work since he was born, pointing out that he's far more experienced than a newbie like him. If only he knew he was fighting with someone who spent 50 years in the organization. As the eight-legged man gloats about his superior skills, Yells for Peter to die. Someone calls out to him and brings him back to reality. Looks up wondering who would be talking and sees the young man he thought he was strangling standing unharmed in front of him. Initially he refuses to believe it, but then he looks back at the person he wrapped his body around and realizes that it's his subordinate who already got killed by a chopstick to the neck. Poor guy. Looking at the face, the eight-legged is stunned, and that's when he remembers that he didn't even notice who he was holding because he couldn't see properly. After the mind-numbing occurrence, he looks up at the young man standing above him in horror. He's been in this line of work for decades, and that's why he's 100% sure that he's going to die at the hands of the skilled killer. Seeing the scary look on Peter's face, the eight-legged man starts to think that he might even be better than the TW apostles. Regardless, he's not just going to let him kill him like that, so he begs Peter to wait and hear him out. Peter agrees to talk with him, so he gets up to his feet and immediately grabs the high school assassin. He holds her face tightly and offers her to Peter, claiming that she could still be useful to him even though she doesn't have much field experience. The terrified girl, who's already sporting several bruises on her face, refuses to go, but her superior just shuns her and warns her not to interrupt his important negotiations. Surprisingly enough, Peter accepts the offer and comments on how quickly all Glory Club members make deals to save their skins. Seeing the young man agree to his offer, the octopus head quickly abandons girl and makes his way to the exit. He tells Peter to use the girl as he wishes, and in return he would pretend like nothing ever happened between them. In reality, it's clear that he's very eager to find out the young man's real identity. He even thinks about how he would harm him when he does, but before he can finish the thought, Peter interrupts him by saying a familiar word. Hearing him talk about the term special technique, the eight-legged man stops in his tracks. He turns around and Peter repeats a familiar phrase that the head man's trainer always said to him back then. He told him that if he showed his back to his opponent thinking he'd won, that would be the moment his head would fly off. The words trigger the old memories of his trainer, and it's at this moment that the eight-legged man starts to put the pieces together and sees the resemblance between Peter, his trainer, and the young man standing in front of him. Finally, he realizes that the young man is none other than the legendary Peter, and the very thought grips the octopus head with fear. Our hero then reminds him of what he said earlier about how none of his opponents have lived to tell the tale. After hearing his name, in the blink of an eye, Peter charges at him and uses a devastating skill to twist the hyper-flexible eight-legged man to the point that his bones snap and kill him on the spot. Later that night, we see another rather flexible character doing a handstand on the roof of a skyscraper. He has a tattoo of a woman on his back, and for some reason it's upside down. His subordinate informs him that the eight-legged man is dead and reveals that they found no clues when they inspected the place, especially since the CCTV was removed. The calisthenic guy finds it amusing that an old man whose days were already numbered got shot, came back to life, and killed 4 of their men. He finally gets into a normal standing position, tells his subordinate to inform the Glory Killers that the mission level has now been raised to Trip S level with a bounty of 7.6 billion won to go along with it. The insanely fit boss instructs his subordinate to notify all the Glory Killers that they're now allowed to openly hunt down the legendary Rep Peter. The scene switches, and in the brightly lit busy streets of the town we see a young boy calling his father's attention to the advertisement on one of the screens. Everyone else also turns to look at the latest update on the big screen, and among them is the man himself, Peter. It's a coded message from the Glory Club. A picture of the old Peter is on display along with a message seeking help for the elderly and homeless. Under the ad is a phone number for the people to call if they'd like to donate. And as if that's not enough, people from the Glory Club are sharing flyers on the streets and seeking support. One of them approaches Peter and hands him a flyer asking him to donate 20,000 won monthly to the Glory Club, posing as a non-profit organization. Our hero looks at the paper and is immediately outraged, squeezing it up and claiming that he'll go and take down the Glory Club by himself. After deciding that he'll bring down the organization, only one person comes to his mind to help him with his mission. Unfortunately, the person in question is most definitely a crazy weirdo, but our guy doesn't have any options. Later that night, Peter visits a demolished bathroom. Of all places, he enters the place and sees many people sleeping on the floor. As he navigates through the sea of clearly unhygienic people, he wonders how their numbers keep rising each time he visits. After passing through, he finally gets to the other side and goes to the wall to check out the posters. There he traces his hand across the wall, trying to remember the location of something, and recalls that it was between the posters for organ trafficking. In a steamy night, he finally finds the spot he's been looking for and pushes the hidden button there to unveil a secret passage. He passes through the secret door and goes down the dark stairs till he reaches a beautifully furnished apartment. It's not his first time in this place, but he still shows a look of shock on his face at the sight of this amazing room. He looks around the place, drooling over the designer seats and expensive bottles. Wine lined up on the shelves. It's hard for him to not admire this place, and he comments on how they've slathered it with money, but soon enough our hero is brought back to reality when the pointy end of a cane is brought close to his neck. He looks over at the lady holding the cane, noticing that she's blind. He assumes that all the expensive things in the house are probably of no use to her, since she can't even see them. It seems her loyal dog doesn't like Peter very much, as it immediately starts barking at him with hostility. Hearing Peter's voice, a small smile appears on the blind woman's face, and she concludes that she'd soon have to get rid of a corpse for the first time in a while. Miss Rich